James, I do know here on the South Plains in particular, there's been some corn gone in the ground. Some of it was coming up this past week around the 15th or so of April when we had some of really cold temperatures, and I've heard of a little frostbite damage potentially on those seedlings, and others said they came through it in good shape. Planting really is just barely getting started. I'd expect that I know we had some producers right on Friday, Saturday, started up in areas around Dumas and up north of Amarillo. So planters are hooked up, and they've either made trial runs or they're actively going full speed. It just depends on each farm. Of course, as you and I've talked many times in the past, our planting patterns have changed some on the Texas High Plains. Going back to the high heat and drought we had in 2011, we see corn going in from late April all the way up to about the first week of June, where plantings get staggered and spread out as they seek to manage their irrigation water and to be able to better utilize alternative crops that they're doing now in conjunction with corn. So we're going to have a pretty long planting season this time, I'm expecting, and so we have just started, and those folks are getting on go for planting corn not only but other crops as well.
So as you talk about a longer planting period than what might have been true once upon a time for corn in our region, and some staggered planting going on schedule-wise, have we had enough experience with this strategic approach to see if it is paying off for farmers who are doing that?
Well, many of them feel, we have funded some research with Dr. Bell there in Amarillo looking at that, and with some of those results and along with what farmers are seeing on their farms, it's being pretty successful. We've seen really good yields come in from the early planted corn. We're seeing real good yields come in on some of that May planted corn with the new genetics and hybrids that we have available. And actually, we're seeing a lot of those more drought-tolerant varieties that they have are more water efficient, that are certainly using less water and producing equal or equal, or maybe in some cases better yields than what they had expected on their farms in the past. So I think we've got enough to say it's successful. It's just that, it all comes down to management. With these new hybrids, new technologies we have, management on the farm is critical. Timing's critical. Putting the right things all together is real critical. But that's the day and age we live in with these precision applications of chemical precision planting. We do things a little different than we did 10 to 15 years ago, and especially since, prior to that drought we had in 2011, which now is nearly 10 years ago. That kind of changed the landscape here for us.
Yeah, indeed it did, but it's good to hear that farmers are able to make some adaptations that are beneficial to them. Well, now that we do have planting underway and some emergence, in fact, where do you see us headed here in 2020 when we talk about our region and the total acreage and how that might have compared to recent history?
Well, NASS, according, USDA says we're going to see overall in Texas about a 7 to 8% increase in acres. I expect the most of those acres are or would have been in the dryland areas from the Red River down to the Rio Grande Valley. And we've had excellent planting in some of those areas. We've had excessive moisture that's prevented planting, especially in northeast Texas. And we had some extreme drought in areas west of Victoria and going on around the coastal bend down there that kind of prevented from a dry standpoint. So on the high plains, we're sitting here, we know we plant very little dryland corn, so it's more of what the farmers can manage their water in order to be able to adequately produce a crop. And I'm expecting this year on the high plains we'll see less acres than we had last year, probably maybe somewhere in 600,000 acre range. We're seeing more of those acres go to silage each year, and that's partly due to the fact that corn in the Midwest is very cheap and forage is needed by our dairies and by our feedlots. So probably of that we will see some increase in silage acres again this year.
Why would you expect overall acreage then to be down in our region?
Well, we were up last year after so much cotton failed and didn't get in the ground. There was corn planted that wasn't planned on at this time. Probably we're looking at the same planting intentions we looked at last year, but not what actually wound up happening.
Okay, so roughly where were we at last year with what did happen once we had corn added into areas where cotton had failed?
We picked up probably close to 100,000 acres of corn that would have been cotton last year after we had so much excess and moisture and it got past their planting time. So that was something we'll probably, I expect those acres will probably go back to cotton this time. That's a part of the water management plans on the farms, and it spreads the risk in the market as well.
So if I'm not trying to do the arithmetic too easily here, if I'm not letting the mathematics overwhelm me, I guess last year in the Texas Panhandle South Plains, we would have been around maybe somewhere close to 700,000 acres, but this year closer to 600,000.
Right, and I think last year we were thinking 600,000 until the failed acres happened on the cotton.